How's it going, YouTube? It's Pilot Flame and we are back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at the Shadowbringers level 71 dungeon, Holminster Switch, which can be unlocked in the main scenario in Final Fantasy XIV's latest expansion, Shadowbringers. So we're going to take a look at it. Unfortunately, my footage was not the greatest quality for when I first did it, so I'm just doing it on Paladin, which I'm leveling currently right now, so I can show you kind of what it looks like. So let's get straight into it. So I'm going to basically be talking the whole way through and playing at the same time. So we're going to go straight into it here. So right off the bat, you can see a whole bunch of stuff's going on here. A whole bunch of mobs. So there's a lot of very big mobs from what we can tell in this dungeon. I'm going to do a big pull because I'm a paladin. So it's pretty straightforward. These mobs will all spawn in this sort of manner throughout the first phase of this dungeon. So, and I'm just gonna hollow, and then I'm just gonna spam my AoEs. So the first thing that you can tell as I look around the area is that you can very much see that we are outside. It doesn't look very dungeon-esque. It looks more like an open area, as if you can explore it. The mobs are obviously light scent based mobs, so this forest is being overtaken by them, and they seem to be quite angry that we've stepped on their territory. So I did this originally on Warrior and then on Gunbreaker. I found it was a lot easier in Gunbreaker. Warrior does not get good until 76 when you receive Nascent Flash. Obviously with a Paladin you have access to Hollow Ground right off the bat, so not too much worries there. I'm probably going to pull the rest of these as well, because I can always just heal myself if I have to. So, which I'll do that right now. Well, that was mildly annoying. So now I'm just gonna clemency myself a few times, and then we're just gonna spam some AoEs again. I'm gonna use this just so I can block a little bit. Clemency myself a couple of times again. And yeah, trash pulls are pretty much, they're going to be more or less the same, aren't they? You're just going to basically pull wall to wall on pretty much every tank, especially if you have the gear from the dungeon, and especially if you're on level. So as an example, I am level 71. The second I hit level 72 in this dungeon, I'm going to be innately stronger for the armor bonus that I gain, and that's with any dungeon that will work out. So if you're in the 73 dungeon, 74 is a big power spike for you, and so on and so forth. So yeah, pretty cool scenes here, because it looks like you can tell that it looks like we can go to those other areas. So it's obviously super cool visually, and it looks like we kind of just found an opening in the forest. And the first boss we're gonna fight here is the Forgiven Dissonance, which is going to do a bunch of different things here. So I believe this is the Buster or AoE. It is the AoE, Path of Light. So not really too much going on there, just need to heal it. Brazen Bull is their cast for putting these orbs out, and then they basically create lines across the arena, and it will do various different patterns for the most part throughout the dungeon. And then she'll turn back, or he, I'm not sure if it actually has a gender, but we won't discriminate here, it could be he or she. We'll just call it the Forgiven Dissonance. And yeah, it'll do various different floor patterns like that over the course of the fight. It'll spam Path of Light again, and then Pillory is the Buster, that's the one I was looking for there. So just mitigate it as normal. And then it's going to use Brazen Bull again, and it pretty much just rotates around those three, with just different floor patterns for this. But it does an AoE around itself now, which we need to get out of. Go into the safe spot over here. it will then use a dash in the one direction. And then now it's going to do a cone on the way back. Oh no, it didn't. It only does it in the first rotation then. I'm also messing up my rotation. Yeah. So pretty self-explanatory here. Just obviously pop cooldown as well for the Tank Buster. And it just rotates Path of Light into Pillory, into Brazen Bull. And for some reason my Requiescat didn't go off, so that's always fun. And then it should do the cone back the other way. Yep, and then we have to run all the way to the other side after this, because it puts AoEs on the ground. It does the dash first, and then it does the AoEs on the ground. And it turns back for another cone, but you can just stand right here to get full uptime, or the range can stand slightly further back. It's going to do one more AoE. And I'm going to save my Fight or Flight for the big pull, and then hopefully, yeah. So yeah, that's the first boss. Pretty straightforward, just stuff that you more or less would have seen before. I'm going to pass on this, I don't need these. So we're going to be going on to the next pool, and now it's obviously turned into more of an outdoor scene here. We're out in more like the farmland area rather than the wooded areas. So obviously a different scene there. The one annoying thing about these mobs actually is that there is those big, the Forgiven Deceits, I think is how it be pronounced. They add a slow onto you, as you can see right now, and it lasts 10 seconds, then 5 seconds, then 3 seconds, I think it is, and it's super annoying. And they just continually spam it on you, which is obviously one of the most annoying things ever. And it's probably one of the most annoying mechanics a dungeon could actually introduce, is just slow on tank it. See, we just got it again there for another 5 seconds. So, not the most fun mechanic. Especially when you're doing big pulls and you're trying to AoE them down. So, and we'll just collect these guys here, and we're running up the hill. And I got slows. Oh, it's by the gremlins actually. I think the gremlins are the ones that actually cast it. So, yeah. Pretty annoying. Pretty annoying. So, but it does have diminishing returns, and then it eventually, like we just saw there, I was fully resisted from that. So, we'll just continue on here, popping Sheltron as we can. Don't really have much else outside of Sentinel and Rampart, so we'll just pop it when we come back up. If you ever feel, like on Paladins especially, that you find that you're running low on HP, just you can clemency yourself, but the White Mage obviously should be using Holy, but if you are with an Astro or a Scholar, then you can obviously help out a little bit for bigger pulls when you don't have Hollowed Ground in your whole toolkit. So we can see an Adventurer didn't look like he made it all the way to the safe house. And then another clearing here, which looks like, as we can see on the horizon, a bunch of different burnt villages. And probably was done by Tesleen the Forgiven, so, or potentially caused some sort of form of havoc. Alright, so the Tickler is the Tank Buster. For Paladin, you can pretty much just use your Sheltron, and it's pretty easy to heal straight back up. Scold's Bridle is the AoE. So again, Buster into AoE. Now this is a mechanic that we've seen before. It is one that is from originally from A11, more recently seen from the MNF fight in 012 Savage. Basically all it is that everyone gets a number from 1 to 4, and you will then dash in a line that deals a little bit of AoE damage if he dashes to people that are in close proximity of one another. This here is just a stack AoE, and this stack will then put a ice puddle on the ground just now, so we want to move out of that. And those other AoEs also apply the same ice puddle. And the fevered flagellation, I think it's how it's pronounced. I can't remember. I'm just going to call it the O11 mechanic. Ideally, what you want to do is have everyone stack around the boss and just stand on the 4 cardinals of him so that he doesn't dash all the way across the arena, especially if you have melees in your party. They would very much appreciate that. So here comes the AoE again. And then another AoE. Not really using Veil. The AoEs don't really hit too hard. A Medica 2 can literally heal them all straight back up. Or just any type of regen, especially after the 2 hits. I should put my dot there, but I'm bad. Another AoE. And yeah, so pretty comfortable so far. The bosses obviously have a decent bit of health, and the majority of the damage comes from I used my hollow ground by accident. The majority of the damage does come from the AoEs. The busters typically don't hit very hard and can use very minimal cooldowns. Or basically just doing mechanics wrong. Like even with multiple Vuln stacks, like the bosses aren't gonna do very much damage at all. So yeah, after this I don't need my hollow ground at all, really, because it's not, there's no big pulls after this. It's all sectioned off, as you'll see coming up. So we're into the burning village now, as we saw. So we'll just pass on this stuff here. Basically, it doesn't matter if you drag these guys over into the next pack over here. So there's 4 packs in total. This one that I have, the one that I'm standing on top of right now, the one that I'm looking across to, and then the one at the very last entrance. So just AoE them down as normal. Not really too fussed with these. But they force you to do smaller pulls because of the mechanic where they hatch out in this courtyard. But the EXP is something I actually want to talk about, because there are bosses that do have a very large chunk of EXP, and they get exponentially more so the further you go along into the story, onto the dungeons. I believe, what was it? I think it's the last boss of the 79 dungeon actually gives like 5 million XP or something for completing it, which is obviously absolutely insane. And you can see these mobs are giving 30k a piece, so you say 120k a pull. There's 4 of them. It's what, 400k, you know, and whereas the bosses are giving around like 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil, 4 mil, you know, they're giving a lot more XP. So they have been moving towards that, where the bosses are the ones giving the EXP, and rightfully so. They are the hardest things to kill in the dungeon, or I should say most difficult, not necessarily difficult in its own right, but just they obviously take more time than a trash pool would. I'm just gonna move over here so we can get these guys to spawn immediately when they come up. Saves from people having to move. Yeah, so pretty straightforward stuff. A really cool scenic dungeon. Definitely makes it feel like you're in an open world rather than a contained environment. And this dungeon was a really good starter to the expansion. Looking back at the experiences in this, if you don't have the right gear, so like me, initially I had some 375 pieces from Sigmascape, so I was taking a bit more damage than what I should have, and then I was able to get some gear and made sure I was on top of that. That mob is obviously stunnable to stop the AoE. I believe it can also be interrupted as well. But if it has a cast, then it should be interruptible. If it doesn't, which I don't think it actually does, then it's only stunnable. But in comparison to the other dungeons we got in the expansion, we managed to, well, we got, or previous expansions at this level. So in comparison, we had Dusk Vigil, and then we had the Siren Song Sea. Siren Song Sea was obviously super cool. It was in its own different environment as well. The Dusk Vigil was very mundane, very boring way to start off an expansion. It actually wasn't part of the main scenario. So something that's you know, a lot better this time around, and in Stormblood as well. And then what you'll see is that we get a different view here of the bosses. So this guy looks like he's been wreaking havoc. Light Warden Philia. All the things that we're fighting are Light Wardens or Light Sense or whatever you would like to call them. And yeah, so really cool aesthetically looking boss. So let's see what he does. So obviously a very noticeable hitbox in size. Scavenger's Daughter is the first cast, which is just your AoE. Head Crusher is the Tank Buster, which has a pretty cool animation in itself. So this ability is a bit similar. So this is kind of like your GA100 from A11. So what he does is he puts a proximity marker on somebody, and then and that somebody is the main tank, assuming the main tank's not dead. And that marker just basically has to be taken away from the group because it does proximity-based damage. And then what he does is jumps to the main tank and then jumps back to the middle, again dealing proximity damage on both hits. That mechanic that you just saw there is proceeding after it, where he puts a marker on somebody and then causes the person to be chained up and inability to take action, and then points an AoE at them, which just has to be broken by a small DPS check. Nothing too crazy there. He then follows it up with left and right knockout, which is just a weird, like a, not quite 270, but a cleave in that sense. He then follows up with a tank buster, and then some small AoEs around everyone, which you don't want to stack on top of each other, and then has a stack marker, which everyone has to stack in a line for to reduce the amount of damage incoming. He's then going to do his main mechanic next, I believe, if I remember correctly. After a few autos. Nope, he repeats Pendulum again. I think he has to be put to a certain percentage before he actually does it, now that I think about it. Yes, so Fierce Beating. So where these arrows are is where he's going to put some AoEs, and then that arrow is going to signal where he's going to rotate around to. So what he's going to do is he's going to keep shooting cone behind him, as well as some AoEs in front of him, so you kind of just have to rotate around the boss, not getting hit by either of them. Can be annoying for people that have to cast, but for melee it should be pretty straightforward. Would obviously recommend using stuff like True North for melee DPS. For ranged, you just have to do your thing. And then for casters, obviously try to stay more or less where I'm like staying right now, as close to the back so that you don't have to move as much. Into the Light is just the AoE again, the stack marker AoE that is, in a line. Right knockout, he's gonna do, you can see the AoE there, and then the left knockout, he does one then the other. I'm not sure if it is the opposite, the direct opposite of what he does from the previous one, but he did do the opposite that time, but I wouldn't hold it to it. Here's the chain down mechanic where the person gets basically stuck in this little bind before having to be broken out, called Aether Soup. And then he just does a cone, which you obviously don't want to stand in, which is a channel over a few seconds. And that's pretty much it. So his main mechanic is the one where he just obviously spins around and shoots the AoEs in front and cleaves out the back. And that's the Holminster Switch. So I hope you guys enjoyed the dungeon. Remember that at the end of all these dungeons you get a guaranteed drop as well for leveling dungeons. It drops 390 gear, and the only thing that you can't get is a weapon. You can get anything but a weapon. And obviously you can't stack both rings as normal, and that's pretty much it. It's quite nice for new players as well, being able to get gear, yeah. So that's gonna do it for this video today. Make sure to like, favorite, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, look forward to the next one. Take care.